Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Audio Product Development Alliance. I'm Roger Shively from Shively Acoustics International, and this is the APDA. It's your gateway to the audio product development. Today's topic is Vietnam, Vietnam's next chapter, supply chain and manufacturing strategies. And joining us today is Bruce Crompton, co-founder of Crompton Manufacturing Consultants Vietnam, CMCV. Hello, Bruce. How you doing? In
Roger.
addition, hey, in addition to Bruce, online with us from APDA is Steve Willenberg from LinkPlay. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Roger. Hey, Bruce. Great to have you on board.
And also here, Dave Lindberg from DB Enterprises and the THD Podcast. Hi, Dave.
Yes. Hey, thanks for having us, and thanks for Bruce.
Yeah. And our media partner is Audio Express with Joel Martins, and we're supported by Adam Levinson from Levinson Consulting. And before we get started, just a little bit about the APDA. The Audio Product Development Alliance is the only organization focused exclusively on audio product development education, providing current relevant content that can be experienced in person, live online, and on demand. It's combined with valuable cross-industry knowledge sharing. The APDA serves as a networking hub for the audio industry, offering access to experts and colleagues for professional development. The APDA is where we come to learn how to build relationships and build better audio products. And we talk about automotive applications, we talk design, measurement, simulations, supply chain, headphones, earphones, wireless technology, and we even touch on industry standards. So that's a little bit about us. And thank you also to Spencer, who is producing us today on this live talk. We are recording this as well, so you can check us out on our YouTube channel. It'll be there later too. You can share it, like it, join it, watch it again. And also, we have a, uh, a LinkedIn group that we'd like you to join if you can. You request to join it here on this LinkedIn group, and we'll let you in. And we can also share our comments during this event that we're hosting right now in that section, as well as in the live chat comment section on YouTube channel. And we can follow up on those comments also later on as we continue the engagement there at in LinkedIn. So if you get a chance, share and join the LinkedIn group. Um, as we go through this, we'll be watching the chat for questions and the comments for questions, and we'll start bringing those into Bruce. So let's start talking about what's going on here. So Bruce, you are the co-founder of Crompton Manufacturing Consultants Vietnam. So that's CMCV, and maybe now you could share just a little bit up front about who is CMCV and, maybe your perspective on Vietnam manufacturing, the ecosystem there, and the responses to the evolving U.S. tariffs, and maybe what you see as the country's window of opportunity at this point. So go right ahead.
All right. Thanks very much. As you mentioned, I'm Bruce Crompton, and we are CMCV, and we are a um, company that helps develop partnerships in Vietnam. We work on the ground in Vietnam, so that makes us in front of suppliers on a regular basis. A bit about me, I've been in Asia for 30 odd years now. I did 20 plus years in China, and about 6 years ago, I came down to Vietnam and realized that this is the new hotspot to be in, and we're looking at opportunities here that we saw 20 years ago in China. So that's about us. We work directly with buyers in the US, in Europe, and in Canada, and we help them navigate the landscape in Vietnam. So why don't I get straight to the subject at hand, and I will
Okay.
uh, share my presentation here. So we'll start with, um, yeah,
Could you go
can
full
you see
screen
that
for us?
correctly?
Uh,
Oh,
we're, yeah, we're seeing not the
my
slideshow
notes.
present. So you need to maybe change your main screen there. No problem.
Sorry.
No,
1 second.
that's okay. So Dave, you also work with folks in Vietnam and China, and s-
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
and you know Bruce very well and CMCV. Um, there we go. And so I think this is going to be it's important to supply chain, but also how you deal with how you work outside of China sometimes, the China plus one strategy. So here we go. It's on.
Yeah.
All
There
right.
we go.
Okay, go ahead, Bruce.
All right. So today's subject is the next chapter. What's changing and where it's headed for Vietnam. So first off, we've seen a huge amount of growth in Vietnam over the course of the last 6 years I've been here and the last 15 years since things really began to pick up. Vietnam is broken down into three areas. We've got the North, the South, and the Central, and we'll talk about each of those. So in the North, you have consumer electronics, you have high tech, you have a lot of the new industry flowing in. In the South, this is the old hand of Vietnam, started in the 80s. This is your textiles, sneakers, a lot of wood products, a lot of agriculture. And that's been the driving force behind exports for a number of years. But what's happening now is the North is starting to um, come on strong. The central region is still being developed and is probably 5 to 10 years out. Infrastructure is still being built. There are a lot of companies moving down there, but they're disconnected from the rest of Vietnam still with deep sea ports and other things. But that's going to come online in the next 5 to 10 years. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
FDI dominates in Vietnam right now. So that is foreign direct investment. These are
Okay.
companies that have come to Vietnam to set up. You've got the companies like Samsung, uh, Canon, Foxconn, Apple, Lego, the list goes on. Gore-Tex,
Did these
the list goes on.
did these all start
Yeah.
coming in 10 years ago or more? How long ago did they start coming into Vietnam to
Well,
start?
there was kind of a phase 10 plus years ago where Canon came in and then Samsung came in to a certain level.
Hmm.
Foxconn is relatively new. There's a lot of other players that have been here 10 years, but their growth has really happened in the last 5, 6 years. Uh, Pre-COVID, post-COVID in that area, and a
Okay.
lot more foreign
Mm-hmm.
investment dumped in that time.
Okay.
And Bruce, a quick question just with regards to, some of the reasons behind that. Obviously, 10 years ago, there wasn't the tariff issues that we're talking about now. But was it a diversification strategy of companies that said, as China, grew, larger and larger, labor rates went up, and people were just looking for that alternative, if you will, instead of putting everything into one location, having a diversification strategy. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's been the accelerant here as well. Pre 2015 or so, we started talking China plus one to mitigate the risk over several platforms, so people could, if trade deals weren't being done or things happened in global geopolitics, then there were options. And Vietnam became the front runner in that race to be the plus one. Today, I would say that the equation has changed. It's not China plus one anymore. It's Vietnam with China support, or the back end being China. And this is a very common theme with most factories now. Um, Now, the reason that happened, yeah, there's geopolitical, there's tariffs, rising costs in China, um, spending a lot of money on lower tech, labor intensive, cost of labor also played a part. Um, but in the electronic industry, it was mostly hedging bets, and it was a smart bet to hedge. I think this point in the game.
Hmm. And as you go through your presentation, maybe you can give a little bit of a top point of discussion with regards to, how does Vietnam separate themselves from other Southeast Asia, countries? Why, as an investor, would I want to go to Vietnam versus say Thailand or some of the other countries that we've talked about in the past, Malaysia, Philippines, just to try to get a sense of how they're positioning themselves.
Exactly. Well, I can let me touch on that right now. I think when the world moved to China, there was a understanding that the government was in a one-party system is pretty consistent. It doesn't sway with elections. And Vietnam kind of has that same approach to politics. It is a one-party system here. It is a communist country, which allows stability and government-driven growth rather than consumer-driven growth or economy-driven growth. So the government can do what they want. And that is a very sweet thing to hear if you're purchasing in Asia that there isn't going to be any disruption or minimal disruption. If we look at Thailand, if we look at with the monarchy, they've had their political troubles. Cambodia is in a bit of hot water right now with their scam rings and some other things. And Philippines has tried really hard, and they have great relationships with the U.S., but it's an island nation. It's cut off from the rest of the world, so transportation costs are extremely high. So I think that puts Vietnam in a unique position in an area that is, most people would say, most cultures look the same to me or similar to me. They are very different, and how they're managed is very different. So I think that's given Vietnam the catalyst
Hmm.
to, be winning the war today. Tomorrow is a different story, but who knows what'll come up. Okay, so I'll march on.
Yeah.
And we'll move on to just talk a little bit about what Vietnam has been able to do. And here's our neighborhood. So you can see Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, Singapore, and their exports for 2024, or in some cases 2023. Vietnam has outdone them all by a considerable margin at 400 billion last year. This year, we're expecting, even with the geopolitical tariff situation, we're going to grow again somewhere in the neighborhood of 8%, they're saying. Let's see how it ends up at the final tally and what else happens. Um, so that is a strong message to anybody looking at the numbers. Um, a population of 100 million people, and they're producing more than, say, Indonesia or Malaysia, who both have larger populations than Vietnam.
Hmm.
Another driving factor, too, is for Vietnam is um, there was this little thing in Vietnam in 1970s that really put the country on full stop mode. People weren't having families. People weren't, they were digging themselves out of poverty. And that created a bubble of young workers reaching age at a similar time. And we're right there for the second generation right now. So we have a very large young worker community, and whereas other countries in the area are aging faster than they're growing. So it's a really good time for Vietnam growth as well.
And Bruce, from a labor perspective, as you say, there's a lot of young individuals that you have a large pool. Can you expand on the cost of labor, between the various countries, from a macro level, not a micro level? Is it more expensive in Vietnam, less expensive than China or some of these other countries?
Well, it's definitely less expensive than China. Right now, the minimum wage, which is mostly geared for agriculture and out of city or big city center um, areas is about $220 US a month. When you're talking about in the factory, your unskilled labor is somewhere between $800 and $1,000. Sorry, I did that wrong. I converted from RMB. So no, that's from $400 to $600 or $700, somewhere in that range, depending on the
Okay.
qualifications. So that if you compare that to Thailand, if you look at minimum wages only, yes, Vietnam is comparable. Indonesia, it's higher. Malaysia, I have to look, but I think it's lower than Malaysia. So, but we're talking about small differences. The difference with China is growing quite substantial now. So it is a big difference from China, and obviously from Northern Asia, very big difference.
Okay.
Does that answer that? That's
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
okay. All right. So why Vietnam now? We've talked about the China plus one, or what's evolving into the Vietnam with China support or inputs. Um, Another reason is the key trade deals that Vietnam has and has had been developing over the years with most corners of the world. There is one deal still on the table, the true social trade deal that we're waiting to see the final numbers on. Um, but if that does come in at 20%, that closes that chapter for a little while anyway, and things can get roaring back to business. I'm hoping on that end. There was some talk that the Vietnamese side didn't actually know about the 20%. They only read it on social media. They were talking about 11% in the meeting, and then the post came out and it was 20%. So there's still a long way to go there. So we don't know what the exact details are. Competitive labor costs, we talked about improving infrastructure. The government's really focused on that. A lot of big projects. And what's unique about what's happening in Vietnam in the last 4 to 5 years is government's hitting their targets and they're hitting their budgets within reason. So if they say a bridge is going to open or a highway is going to open or a port's going to open, they're actually doing it and making sure everything is moving along at pace. There were stories back in the day of, I think, Ho Chi Minh, it took 14 years to build the first subway line. Well, that's not today's Vietnam. Now things are really progressing and the government's got their finger on it. Industrial
And
land, yep.
oh, Bruce, just a quick question about some of the infrastructure stuff. From an energy perspective, are they highly dependent upon oil? Or, again, as these companies build, energy becomes a key variable to take into consideration. So I was just curious about the overall infrastructure as far as supporting energy from what the government is doing.
Yeah, actually, the government has really been proactive in the clean energy area. Um, that we have a company called VinFast here that makes electric cars, highly popular in Vietnam. I think it's about 1 in 2 car, or sorry, 2 in 10 cars on the road today are VinFast, and they're good quality. Electric is the big push. Next year, from January 1, no more gas burning motorcycles. Everything must convert to electric. Um, the electric push is on. Solar projects are going up. Wind projects are going up. So yeah, I think they're understanding the need and the problem with dependency on oil from other nations. So they want to be able to do it within Vietnam, and they want to build a cleaner air quality. Most of the electricity today, however, is from coal, and there's a ton of coal burning. But they want to get away from that. They want to wean themselves off with
Mm.
these clean energy
Mhm.
projects.
Yeah,
So
do
I think there's some
a
opportunity.
diversification strategy, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. Bringing in from many sources. So yeah, so energy is, when you talk about infrastructure, you're absolutely right. It's a huge part of it. There's also nuclear projects under discussion, but those haven't really gained any momentum. I think everybody's got a little bit of fear of that, not just from the investment side, but the safety side, and the opportunity to do something like solar or wind is very popular right now.
Mm.
Okay, Vietnam supplier base, broad and fragmented, and I'm going to skip through this bit because I touch on it on another slide.
Okay.
So a lot of our guys are out there are going to ask, what's the supplier environment like? And if you've dealt with China, it's very much similar to that, in that you've got your tier one, you've got your middle of the road suppliers, and then you've got your kind of EWU market suppliers. And we're going to just quickly run through that. The reason I break them up is because most of our customers require a certain amount of compliance and a certain amount of trickle down compliance, meaning their sub suppliers can also be audited. They look all the way through the supply chain for things like Cementa and other social compliance. So the factories to avoid, the factories to do business with, we're going to touch on that. So tier one are generally FDI.
Hmm.
Not in all cases, like the case of VinFast is a wholly owned local company. Um, Export grade, you can go in there and put your orders in there, and if you're big enough to be able to walk in the front door, everything's going to be handled for you, and life is easy, and off you go. These are the Foxcons, the Samsungs, the Gore-Tex, these people. Um, the challenges with that, very high MOQs possibly. They're also EPE, which is export processing enterprises, which means everything that they make has to be exported. Now, you can still
Mm.
use them as a subcontractor or a sub-supplier, but you have to export on paper, bring back in, adding additional costs. So you usually want to be able to use a local vendor. Tier two is the medium-sized guys. They're going to be more flexible. They're going to have some semblance of knowledge when it comes to compliance. They may not follow all their ISO and so forth, but they have it on paper. Good for BOM inputs. You're going to do a lot of training with them. You're going to work very closely with them to make sure what's coming out of their factory is exactly what you need. Tier three is that EWU. They make your pallets. They make your cheap injection stuff, but you don't rely on them. You always have a backup.
Mm.
Another thing that I just wanted to touch on is talking to people in Vietnam and what the differences are between China and Vietnam. In China, you can be fairly direct in your approach, and you can be fairly, as a matter of fact, that doesn't work so well in Vietnam. Um, Everything is a conversation. Communication is indirect. You'll have a lot of praise walking into a factory. You'll have a lot of, oh, this is wonderful, but there's very, very little understanding. So in Vietnam, especially, you need to make sure that people understand the product you're looking for, the compliance you need, the quality you need, and make sure that they have that from top to bottom, from the director all the way down to the shop floor, and making sure that you've communicated everything, and best to communicate in the local language. And sometimes that local language is Chinese, and sometimes it's Japanese, and sometimes it's Korean. But 9 out of 10 times it's Vietnamese here. And
Mm.
build relationships. That's very key, and that's very similar to China. I mean, you can't do anything without a relationship with the factory at some level. Do's and don'ts, I'll just whip through this in 2 seconds. Confirm everything in writing, translated SOPs, visual SOPs, get as much information to the people downstream that are building your product as you can. Be there all the time. One of the biggest problems in peak season is you're the number one customer when you're there. But the minute you get in the car, lines are changing, new products going on,
Mhm.
and a new customer is arriving. So stay put, be in front of them at all times. Indirect feedback, I touched on that. We have a thing in Vietnam that's called Vietnamese time. It's if you say 2 o'clock, 4:30 is acceptable. And that's something that I've had to learn to deal with, but it's also something that can be trained a bit better. So you get a more responsive supplier, but it is part of the culture.
I have a,
Um,
I have a question for Dave,
yeah.
actually. So, Dave,
Oh,
you work with a lot of Asian companies. Is this very similar or in the same
There's,
vein?
yeah,
Or
I would say there's echoes, like
okay,
people going back to what they want to do when you leave. I call that seagulling in China. So the foreigners fly in, drop everything, and then take off, and the people just clean up the mess and go back to work. So some of these things, they echo. The timeliness, for the most part, it's gotten better in China. Um, but yeah, like a lot of these things are echoed, but like subtle cultural differences are influenced here. I was gonna make a joke and say the French hangover make them late for everything, but maybe that's not the case.
okay. I was curious because it seems like some of the emerging economies tend to one it's a conversation always because you're not sure how much is being understood completely because they're learning as they speak more or less but over the years it changes, but I know that China was similar to that, and it can still be in rural areas, and perhaps all the other South Asian areas but also even third other countries that the larger economies work with, you tend to get a lot of this because you're looking at you know, an affordable place to work, and they're willing to do that. So it's just, it makes sense that this is similar. So it's good to know that you're not getting, this is how you work. This is how it goes. So we have to be careful. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
And
good.
when in Rome, you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt too much. So it's good.
No, no, that's great. And on the don't side of things, there's a tricky word that's used a lot in Vietnamese and that's yes. Now, when somebody says yes, you think, okay, understood, and they agree. But in Vietnamese, yes translates into okay, basically.
Right.
So by saying yes, they said, okay, continue, you know. So you really have to be careful that you drive what you need home and get it in writing to them and get it in a format that they can digest.
Yeah. The
Um,
translation for Chinese, I always say is, yes, I hear you talking.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that they get it, but yeah, I
No,
hear you. But it
absorption
doesn't
zero.
mean I
Yeah,
understand it. Yeah.
yeah. So take your time with that and make sure you're communicating properly. I'll
Yeah,
skip through the rest of
patience.
that.
Yeah, patience is critical though too. Like
Very,
I see
very. Yeah.
I see people come over and yell and scream about the Chinese doing this or that. They're not paying. They didn't produce the sample in time or something like this. And it's usually like, yeah, these guys are too busy shipping 200,000 sound bars a month for your silly little projects. Like put it in
Yeah,
context.
understanding where you are in the food chain also helps. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Good. Okay.
Logistics and compliance. We talked a bit about that. The ports, the compliance issue I'm talking about here is with customs compliance, and I'm going to dig a bit into that in the next few slides. So I'm going to leave that alone for now.
Okay.
Um, So we're going to talk about country of origin. Now, this is a hot topic these days, and this is kind of where everybody needs to pay attention and understand what the rules are. We don't know what the rules are, but these are what the rules we assume they are today. And so what I'm going to do is just walk through two products I've made up. One is a multi-channel rack amp, and the other is a speaker wood cabinet. And we're going to see what it looks like when you transship it. Then we're going to try and do better and then better again. And we'll just take a look at what those look like. And just to clarify, any resemblance to any product anybody does here or elsewhere is completely coincidental. So, all right. So here, I hope you can see it. It might be a bit small, but you should be able to read it. So what is the easiest way to make a rack amp in Vietnam? Well, the easiest way is import everything, assemble it, maybe buy some packaging, which in this scenario we're doing, and try and spin it off as made in Vietnam. The problem is today we want to see a 40% Vietnam threshold to even apply for CO. So in this context, we've imported the steel and aluminum. We've imported the total PCBAs, and I don't know how many are in there, plus power supply, plus hardware. Packaging we're going to do in Vietnam, and factory cost is going to be our direct labor cost, our overheads, and some logistics costs. So we put that all together and see where we come out. We come out at 33.4%, not even close to the 40%. The reason I mean, it's only 7% off, but 25% of that is in factory costs, and those can be disputed by customs. Those can be disputed by the CO organization before they issue. How did you come up with your overheads? How did you do this? How did you do that? End of the day, that might be 15 after they've talked you through it. So best that we're well above that line. And now what can we do to improve that? Well, let's see what we can do. We're gonna look for the highest value, lowest friction item on the list, and we're going to tackle that. So that, in this case, is steel and aluminum. So maybe we can get all the steel, but we can't get the aluminum. But for today's argument, we can get it all. So we're going to put that into the Vietnam side of the equation. And we're going to raise the price on that because it might be more expensive in Vietnam than importing from China. Raw materials come from China still, but the final transformation happened in Vietnam. So logic is might be a bit higher. So all of a sudden we've come up to almost 60%. Now that qualifies as Vietnam value content. You can go ahead and apply for your CO based on that. They may still question your factory cost. And if you knock 25% off that, you're going to fail. But they're not going to knock all 25. They're going to knock 10 or whatever off of it, and you're going to be still COO. How can I take it one step further and use the substantial transformation to build this product? All right. So what we've done is we've thrown the steel and aluminum back to China, and we've taken on the PCBA, all in Vietnam for population and assembly. We've imported 100% of the components for that assembly from China, Taiwan, Japan, wherever. And that's 100% imported. But because we made the transformation in Vietnam, we're going to take all the chapter codes that you see here, and we're going to convert those into a finished product under 853890, or the other one that's there. So now what that's done is it's taken that total assembly and it is treated as made in Vietnam. So now I can take the full value of that assembly, put it back into my BOM, and it becomes a Vietnamese portion of that BOM. So what we've done here is we've jacked it up. Even though we've taken the aluminum and steel out, we've jacked it up to 68.5, almost 70%. Now substantial transformation has happened. We qualify for the 20%. It also fulfills the value. So you're covering both sides, and there's going to be absolutely no question, slam dunk, CO. You can bring it in under the lower tariff, or any of the other trade agreements that those will travel as duty free.
That's what I was going to ask you, because you're talking about country of origin, but who's asking the country of origin? Obviously the United States, but also Europe, anywhere else? Or
Exactly.
is Vietnam then also under a tariff agreement with Asian countries I'm not as familiar maybe as some, but what kind of trade agreements do they have and they need to fulfill? And this matters. And I'm assuming it's that country that's investigating this country of origin and has to meet a certain level of Vietnam.
Right. It'll be because the practices are more or less the same.
Okay.
The thresholds may be different, but the way of evaluating under CPPT, which is Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, Vietnam is a member. They still use rules of origin, even though the threshold might be lower. So it's a requirement anyway. And for somebody that gets a CO for Europe may need to get a new CO for US under different guidelines. But one would hope that a single CO would work for all exports.
Okay. And if I understand your example here, transformation was it merely adding the assembly of the PCBA here, or was there and the locally sourced hardware and packaging, but was that hardware and packaging perhaps sourced outside of Vietnam, or was it all sourced inside of Vietnam? I was trying to understand how we got to the point where it was more of a transformation than it wasn't before. So is the
Well,
primary thing?
by changing the HS code
Hmm.
from one chapter to another chapter,
Yeah.
that creates a substantial transformation that allows it to be called Vietnamese,
And all you
even
have,
with 100%
okay, so
import.
you have to then justify your HIS code change, which is based on some, existing data or, reality that you did something. But if you're thinking maybe you're not looking at the HS codes deeply enough and properly, then that's part of what you're trying to do is make sure you're getting the best advantage. Is that the case?
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
Exactly.
Is,
So when you bring those components in, you need to make sure your import documents are supporting those HS codes,
Okay,
even China to Vietnam. And you need to explain to customs that show them videos, show them SOPs, show them the development of that product and how you transformed it, and then you're fine.
okay.
Um, as
And,
long as you're not trying to misclassify the product. If they can look at the HS code and say, yes, this is that, then you shouldn't have an issue.
okay.
Hey, Bruce, another question with regards to trade agreements. Is there a resource that people could go to? Obviously, a lot of the focus is on the U.S. and their trade or their trade relationships, but Canada, Mexico, Latin America, Europe, obviously. So they're all going to be different because each country obviously has their own relationships with each other. And I was just curious, is there a website or something that, somebody could go from, say from Mexico or
And find out.
Colombia and find out what the trade deal is with Vietnam?
Well, if you look at there's two major trade deals, the Trans-Pacific, and that covers so many countries. Now, in
Does it?
that
Okay.
particular case, all those countries are playing by similar rules within that agreement.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to look at which countries aren't participating in that in the Western world. I think it's all 27 EU nations. It's Canada. It's Mexico, I'm not sure. I'd have to look. And then there's regional agreements that handle Asia and Southeast Asia. And then there's a whole bundle of the countries in there, Japan, Korea, from the north, and Indonesia, Malaysia from the south. So I don't have that information right in front of me, but I could find a source and pop it up,
Yeah.
guys,
Yeah, I
and you
think
can
it would
share
just
them.
be good. I know that the TPP was, a big talking point in the US for a while, and then we backed out of it. But it's the other countries. I just wanted to make sure that Vietnam can be a country that they can obviously deal with and work with in terms of the trade for these types of products.
Yep, exactly. And it's just amazing how many agreements they are in, and I'll find a full list, and the countries that they're working with.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I have one more product, very similar. This will take 2 minutes to run
No,
through.
that's fine.
It's a passive speaker. The big change here is that there's no electronics inside. So we're going to buy the cabinet from Malaysia, drivers from China, hardware China, fabric, grill, packaging, and factory cost. Fails, 40% tariff. That $100 speaker is now $140 when it lands in the US for transshipment. To go one step further than this, what we're going to do is build that cabinet in Vietnam. Price is going to go up slightly, but the offset of the tariff pays for that and more. And we come out at 62%. Going all in, we want to change the substantial transformation. Then we take that driver, break it down, assemble in Vietnam, import all those components, spiders and cones and so forth and caps, bring it all in and assemble in Vietnam. And it's the same thing. We're getting that transformation of HS code, which puts the driver firmly Vietnamese and brings you up to 70%. So that's the.
Oh, okay. So you
Hmm.
started with the term transshipment, and then we went to transformation. Transshipment is merely it goes through the country and nothing happens, or is added no value added to it, or
Right.
explain that one for the
So transshipment used to mean basically comes in, gets packaged, and goes out.
right.
So a wholly finished product gets a package, a label, put back on a container, made in Vietnam, and off to
Got
the
it.
US. And that
Right.
created a lot of friction. And that created a crackdown on that.
Got it.
Every factory in China was doing that. They just hire a small warehouse to rework it and out the door. In today's environment, transshipment means something a little bit different. It means not hitting the threshold. We believe that's what it's going to mean. So
Okay.
not hitting that 40% of value is going to classify you as transshipment
Got it.
in
That's
a
what I
U.S.
thought.
perspective.
Yeah. And I
In
think
the
that
Western
was
world,
happening.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was happening also, built in China, but then shipped to a warehouse in Korea or wherever, and became a new
Yeah.
product.
Kidding. They called it kidding, right?
Yeah, kitting.
Kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Not
Yeah.
just kidding, but
Um,
kidding.
so you mentioned about the monitoring of the HS codes up the supply chain. So that's you have to prepare a backlog of these components coming, resistors or whatever coming from China, and then you're surface mounting them in Vietnam, and you're showing that if they want to dig into it, here's the paperwork. And so that becomes a bit of a burden, not just for you guys preparing it, but making sure that it gets processed properly by the customs people on the other end.
Yeah, and it's a
How
lot of
does
paper stacked in them.
and that must be risky because like you can get the luck of the draw, or how accurate will it be that once you follow the rules and you know what results you're going to get? Is that how it works, or it's still some iffiness?
Well, in the old days, the old days, I'm talking about last year, when
I was going to
before
say, yeah.
the tariff situation reared its ugly head. We had a company called VCCI that handled all the CO approvals for Vietnam. And they were a private organization contracted by the government to do this. And if you walked into their office with the right envelope,
Yeah.
you could probably get your CO and get it within a day, whether it complies or not.
Mhm.
Today, that has all been taken back by the government. So the government agency, it's not on the tip of my tongue right now that they've switched it to, um, is much more cautious, much more detail oriented. So that information stream that you need to provide them, it doesn't matter you've shipped that product 1,000 times before. It's the first time you've applied with the new governing body. So everything starts again. So that's where everybody's getting jacked up right now in line, is that every product is a new product for them. But
Right.
once you've shipped that product and you've created a track record on that product or family of products, then it becomes much easier. That you don't have that need to prove it every time you go out. They're going to do periodic checks and whatever, but you as a company will be trusted more or less for that, or your supplier will be. So yes, a lot of paperwork up front, but I think it'll diminish as products go on and time goes on.
Well, clearly the government's doing that because of the tariff situation right now. So they want to be careful. But you mentioned that in spite of tariffs, there's growth and it's continuing to grow. You said over 8%, I think.
Yep.
How is that happening? I mean, where are they? Is it just because there's just more demand now, and they're doing a better job of supplying it, or how is that the case? All the things that you mentioned that Vietnam is doing right for its infrastructure and everything else, is that the driving force that's creating the
Well,
growth?
I think this is multi-pronged. I think there's that government investment in the future is part of that growth picture. I think part of the growth picture also, we have to be a bit cautious with whatever the final end of year number is
Mhm.
we've sat the last almost 4 months now at a flat 10%,
Right.
waiting for Liberation Day. So there's been a big push to move product. I think that may have artificially um, jacked up the first half,
Okay.
but the growth figures, the government's saying, still on track. If we
Okay.
can keep this momentum going through the second half, yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Um, let's maybe as a final thing, how do you engage? How do you start working in Vietnam? Or have we already covered that
But
completely?
you call Bruce.
You call Bruce.
That would be
1-800
appreciated.
1-800 Bruce
1-800
Crompton.
Bruce.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, they should. But tell me how it goes. I mean, what have we already learned how to avoid the pitfalls of working in Vietnam, or is there more to it than that?
Well, there's always more pitfalls, and every time you turn around, you'll learn something new, and it's a constant evolution. However, these lessons um, are reminiscent of lessons we've learned in the past, in a lot of cases when we've seen that development in China over the last 20 years. We know what peak season looks like. We know what peak season problems look like. We know what container shortages look like. We know what sub-supplier gone bad looks like. Um, so it's taking a very hands-on approach to manage your supply chain. And I think that's the key takeaway here is you have to be engaged in it. You can't send an email and say, okay, I need 200 laptops and expect to get 200 laptops exactly the way you want. You have to involve yourself, or find someone that can involve themselves at a factory level, and give him a call.
Mhm.
So there's always going to be new things to crop up. And I don't remember a day in the last uh, 30 years that there wasn't a problem somewhere, um, major or minor, but being on the ground always helps.
Yeah,
Do you,
I think
go
it's
ahead.
all about the communication, and that's where I think that having, a service like you and your company, Bruce, just is invaluable. Because you're on the street, if you will, you're in the factories. You're like Dave. Dave does a lot of that as well. And I just the communication is so critical, and a little bit of
Yeah,
investment in that goes a long way from solving problems proactively versus reactively.
it's a lot of it's nonverbal too. Like
Yeah.
getting eyes on things to say, oh, that's what the problem is. You get these,
Yeah,
sometimes broken English emails or emails via or WeChats via translation, and the context doesn't come across.
Hmm.
You can be so lost trying to phone it in, but just going there, oh, it takes 5 minutes. In my experience, it's usually like you could spend days trying to figure out what the problem is. And as soon as
or you
I
can
go
go
to the
see it.
factory, yeah, it's like, oh, you put that there, and it's like,
Got it.
teaching your mother to program the VCR. It's like it's just you go there once and it's done.
Yeah. I have
Yeah.
a, I have another question. So maybe you've already answered this one too, Bruce, but do you see more Chinese manufacturers who are well known in China coming like you say, starting small, maybe creating a presence in Vietnam and then trying to grow a larger presence in Vietnam? Or is that happening at all? I mean, it may be happening in Malaysia perhaps, or is it happening in Vietnam? And, if we've got a major
Absolutely.
loudspeaker manufacturer, not major, but someone who does a lot, and wants to see if they can leverage being in Vietnam. Does that happen quite often, or is it
Oh,
happening more?
Absolutely.
And
I
maybe
would say the number one today, FDI is China.
is it
The
okay?
money pouring in right now is mind-boggling, and it's mostly in the north. And the reason for that is they're part of a supply chain, and their supply chain demands that they be close to the finished product. So you've got a lot of small and medium-sized companies moving down that are going to supply their current customers in China that have already moved production.
Ah,
So it's a herd kind of coming our way from China. Um,
yeah.
with that said, they're also coming here to expand their sales potential into a number of other companies that are not related to them now, but they see the growth. So they're building bigger, better factories than they may have in China in some cases.
Now, one question we had is like, so I mean, yeah, it's like, Xylux and Gore-Tex and Shenzhen Horn are in Vietnam. But one of the things I heard is that the ownership of the land as a foreign company, you could actually own it. And this was attractive because like that's been one of the golden tickets for factory development in China, where you buy the land and then the business grows and the city grows around it, and you have a kind of a guaranteed investment. Is that correct that the Chinese can own the property in Vietnam?
I don't believe that that's correct. What it's a similar structure as China, as I'm aware. Um, Not that I don't understand the Vietnamese side, but I'm not sure where China is today. We have 50-year lease grants on land,
Okay, leasehold.
and those
Okay.
can leasehold, and those can
Yeah.
be renewed. And sometimes what happens in the contract, the government will put in a placeholder that says this is an automatic renew. So that can
Mm.
stretch it to 100 years.
Right.
But
Okay. So
ownership,
that'd be
yeah,
value.
doesn't exist.
Okay. Interesting.
okay. Um, And Dave, I was, when I asked the question about Chinese companies coming down, I think you know that that's happening a lot on your side too, since you are located in Hong Kong. And, I think we mentioned, Bruce, you're in Hanoi, right? So that's where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But Dave, you've seen the same thing happening from your point of view, is that this is where we go if you want to, for those reasons that
I
Bruce would.
well, we see all kinds, and I can't quite put my finger on like there's certain variables that people like about Vietnam. Um, and some people are liking Indonesia, like Fujikon and Mei Lun have gone Indonesia. And we know why Fujikon did. I can't remember what Michael from Meilun told me why they went to Malaysia, or Indonesia, sorry. But yeah, they seem to be spawning out. I mean, GGC is in Ho Chi Minh, and that's just because they went there before this was really an
Early
idea.
on. Yeah.
Yeah.
They just
And
went there
so,
because.
well,
Yeah.
they were big. Probably. Yeah, I don't really know why, but these are all
Okay.
interesting stories to find out why and what their strategy was. I mean, I don't know if Tiffany's in Thailand, right? I
That's
don't
good.
know if they have another outside China location in Asia, but the Thailand one was largely for Google and some of that business.
Okay.
So
So
following the customer.
it's a customer. I think a lot of that has to be that. So Bruce, your background, you started in China, correct? In Beijing, or how did you come into Vietnam? I mean, you started up in China and you started to learn the Chinese business clearly there, right?
Yeah, I started the furthest point possible. Well, not the furthest point possible, but I started in Beijing in around 95. And I did that for a couple of years. They're commissioning a factory. And 2 years out, I moved to Hong Kong,
Okay.
where we had a couple of companies in the south. Did that for 6 or so years. Then it was off to Shanghai, um, and ran out of Shanghai because easy access to Suzhou, to Nanjing, to uh, Zhejiang province, a good local hub. And then Nanjing for 6 years. And part of transition with my last company was to come down here and commission a factory down here.
Okay.
And now it's
There you
just
go.
time to get out from behind the desk and get back out and really hit the road and see what's going on in Vietnam. So
So you've
that's,
been there
Mhm.
6 years, is that right? Or so? Is that right?
yeah,
Okay.
just pre-COVID. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just before. Oh, well, okay. Lucky you, I think, maybe. I don't know. So, all right. Anything else I missed, Dave or Steve?
No, it was very enlightening. It
Yeah.
really, gives a lot more context and a lot of valuable information. So, personally, I really appreciate you coming on, Bruce. It was a really good event.
I guess one question I didn't ask you is, Bruce, are you going anywhere recently or in the near future that people can find you or you might be headed to? Any events coming up for you, inside or outside of Vietnam?
Well,
Anything?
in about 5 hours, I'm leaving for Infocom
Oh,
uh, in
I just want
Bangkok.
Hancock, yeah.
Yeah.
sleep on the plane. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's an interesting show. That's a big one for it's not Infocom US. It's a smaller version of that,
Hmm.
but
Okay.
it is an interesting show nonetheless.
Okay, good.
Hong
Yeah,
Kong
yeah.
Electronics Fair. I'll be there. Dave and I were talking about that earlier. I should be there. And yeah, there'll be a few other shows here and there.
Okay, good.
So
All right.
I posted a schedule of shows coming up. Maybe I'll share that with you too, so we can let people know what's going on in Asia.
Yeah, good.
Awesome.
That'd be great. We appreciate you coming on. I think one thing I probably should do for ourselves for the APDA, we have some upcoming events as well. We'll be, I think at the end of August, 1st of September, we'll have Steve Teme on from Listen Incorporated. And later in September, we're planning a Bluetooth LE audio discussion here on our YouTube channel. So please stay tuned to that and keep an eye out. Please join the LinkedIn group or a request to join it. We'll let you in. And I think that's great. Thanks again, Bruce and Steve and Dave, everybody. And once again, make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Share and hit the
Share.
notification bell.
Hit that little bell so you know what's going on. And we keep it up on the channel, and it's there for the rest of time until things fall off. So I think I appreciate it, everybody. And I think we'll see you coming up, like I say, near the end of August, probably into September early, more likely, to see our next session with Listen Incorporated. So once again, thank you and have a good time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Thanks,
bye-bye
everyone.
now. Bye.